Hello and welcome back to a little place we call the No Holds Bar with me, Adam, host of Comedian versus Economist podcast and widely regarded as one of the simplest minds in finance. Hey, this is our last episode in the limited six-part series we're running this year. I've really loved bringing it to you, and if you've enjoyed it and want to see more next year, then leave a comment or hit us up at contact@equitymates.com. But for the final time this year, I'm joined by an expert to educate me and hopefully you on how they're thinking about stocks and the stocks they're thinking about. It's rapid fire though. Buy or sell. We're going to rip through as many stocks as we can in the time we've got. And we will put our money where our mouth is, tracking each stock on the Equity Mates website. It's already making some interesting reading. So if you haven't seen it already, be sure to check that out. And remember, this isn't a deep dive, but hopefully it gets you thinking. You can continue the journey on the Equity Mates website. Plenty of resources there. You'll find the tracker for this show along with the Find a Company page where you can get more info on each of the companies. But today, I have been looking forward to this one for a while. I'm really excited to be joined by Andrew Brown, Executive Chair at E72 Dynasty Trust. Welcome, Andrew.
Good morning, Adam. Nice to be here.
Great. Lovely to have you here on the show. I have been looking forward to this one. But before we get started, Andrew, we are in the No Holds Bar, and I do like to offer each of my guests the opportunity for a drink before we get started. We have a signature cocktail today. It's the NASDAQery, which is quite a tasty number. But what can I get for you, Andrew?
I'm going to avoid the NASDAQery in a big way, and I'm saving you money, Adam. I was going to go for the 17-year-old Hibiki Japanese whiskey, but that's about $1,200 a bottle. So okay. I'll just trade down to the Hibiki Harmony. That's $200.
200, perfect. Hibiki, that's the Suntory. It's Suntory time.
It's one of the Suntory brands. It's a blended whiskey. As opposed to a single malt or whatever. But I'd advise all the watchers and listeners to get into Japanese whiskey because it won't be around in too many years' time. There's a raging supply shortage of Japanese whiskey, and they're mixing in all kinds of nasty Scottish blends.
Right. So it could be, is this a buying opportunity potentially as well to lock away some Japanese whiskey now? And
it's only doubled in price in about the last 3 years, so there you go.
We could stop the show right here. There's your first buy recommendation.
There you go.
Perfect. All right, we have got some stocks to get through, Andrew. A lot to get through, in fact. And we're going to start by looking at the ProShares Short Triple Q ETF, NASDAQ PSQ, currently trading at $10.11, an inverse NASDAQ ETF. Does that make it an FTE? Sorry.
It's an inverse ETF, which means you benefit when the underlying index that it tracks goes down.
Yeah.
And so basically my first sell is the NASDAQ 100, and unless you want to short, the best way to do it is an inverse ETF.
Right.
My three sells today, the other two coming up, are all basically asset bubbles. Okay. And I think the NASDAQ is an asset bubble at the moment. 44% of NASDAQ is 7 stocks, the Magnificent 7.
Yep.
You can look up what they are. Basically, they were, the index has been rebalanced to actually reduce that percentage by 10%. But the key thing is these are not homogenous companies. Apple is tracking nowhere in particular without new product launches. Great cash flow, but at 30-odd times earnings, it's really expensive. Sure. It's a similar situation, obviously, for Tesla. They've got all kinds of issues at the moment. Again, they're not 30 times earnings. They're up in the 80s. Really, of the 7 stocks, there are 2 going extremely well, which is Nvidia, obviously, because of the chips. And also Microsoft is growing really quite nicely in contrast to its other sort of obvious cohorts of Google. Meta's just recovered, really from where it was at the end of 2021 by cutting costs.
Microsoft and Nvidia both heavily aligned with the AI play too, aren't they?
Correct.
Is that a bubble in itself, a bubble within a bubble?
I think AI is a bubble within a bubble. I take you back to the actual origins of the internet, and everybody said, the internet's going to revolutionize everything. And the main beneficiary from the internet was you and I. It was the customer. Because our costs came down to buy all kinds of things, ranging from banking services. We never go to a branch anymore. It's all done online. And I just suspect AI is going to be a little bit the same. That actually the consumer is going to be the bigger beneficiary of this. Look at your search engines already. They're in, things like Bing. and Edge are already incorporating AI into what they do. Some of which drives you absolutely mental, of course.
Well, I don't know if you remember Clippy, the helpful word paperclip, Andrew.
Absolutely, I do.
That was my first exposure to AI. Wasn't great, to be honest.
No, it wasn't. So I think, because it's got relatively easy access, again, trying to monetize AI in, sort of on a screen is maybe not as easy as people think.
Yeah, sure. All right, so the NASDAQ inverse ETF is a buy for you, which is effectively a sell. I like it. It's a buy and a sell, straight up.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Next up, we are looking at Magellan Financial Group, ASX MFG, currently trading at $7.39. Andrew, have you been drinking too much of that fine whiskey?
Most people think I have, actually, when I talk about this company.
Buy, hold, or sell for you?
This is a hold.
It's a hold, okay.
And my two holds today, one is a stock that I actually do already own, but don't want to buy any more at this price, but don't want to sell. And the other is a stock that I actually don't own, but want to buy, but not at the current price. Okay. So we'll get to that later on. MFG is really simple, okay? It's a very misunderstood company. Its main business is funds management, $35 billion of global equities managed in Australia. Obviously, that's come way down from over $100 billion of funds under management. So they've had a lot of issues with performance. It's really a retail fund manager now. In other words, the clients are mums and dads rather than major superannuation funds. But that, in my opinion, only makes up 35-40% of the value of the company, because they have $300 million of cash. They have $400 million worth of investments in their own funds, and then they have a 36% stake in Barrenjoey, Australia's most talked about investment bank. And I think Barrenjoey wants to get rid of Magellan off their register. And so, I think there's lots of catalysts to actually realise value for Magellan over the next little while. Plus, of course, if they can get their funds management business humming a bit, then things will improve. The stock is... the funds manager's sort of valued at sub 10 times earnings, on my view. So I have a valuation for the company is sort of in the mid eights. And I think there's lots of catalysts to get there. And so, it's not going to give you a plus 50% return, but there's a nice, easy return there with some options. So that's why it's a hold rather than screaming buy.
Perfect. All right, next up, we are looking at Catapult Group International, ASX CAT, currently trading at $1.25. And just like any good footy team, Catapult is getting repeat entries here at the No Holds Bar. This is the second time we've had this one. Is it a buy or a sell for you, Andrew?
I hate the fact it's up 13% today as we're speaking, but anyway, we'll keep the buy. Why is it a buy? Okay, this is something, I'm sorry, I'm going to be really insulting here. Australians do not understand.
Yeah.
Okay, when your primary sports in winter are two sports that nobody else in the world plays, namely AFL and rugby league, okay, how do you understand that Arsenal pay West Ham United 116 million euros for one player, Declan Rice?
Yeah, right.
And to rebuild Liverpool's midfield with two players costs about the same amount between the two. To refit things. If you have a 116 million euro player, are you going to let a bloke with a flat cap and a clipboard look after him? No. You are going to use technology to measure absolutely everything about him, and probably including that as well. So it's really, Catapult is basically one of the global leaders in performance and health, which is basically measurement of things. And so then
they're the trackers that they wear on the players.
They're the trackers, backs, right? But it's, I mean, the trackers obviously are peanuts, but it's what you do with the data that's key. And then the other side to things is basically tactics and coaching. And this is where AI comes in, of course, because where you have a game that doesn't flow, like NFL, and these guys are the leaders of technology into the NFL, where you can plot the play, unlike football. So where you can plot the play, then basically you can use AI and you can use all the data to say, hey, the next play should be on third down and 10, the next play should be whatever. So these guys are global leaders in it. The market cap is the equivalent of $205 million US. That's chicken feed compared to things that have changed. Just real quickly, 4 things have changed for this company. Number one, the valuation of sports teams has gone nuts. Okay, think about the sales of Denver Broncos, Washington Wizards, maybe Man United. Secondly, player sales have gone nuts. Transfer fees in English and European football. Thirdly, football, which they need to get more and more into, but they do have Man City and Chelsea. It's unique because you buy the asset and you can trade the asset. You can't do that in NFL and everything else. There are transfer fees that you make money on, like Moises Caicedo. Brighton buy him for nothing. They sell him to Chelsea for 100 million quid. Pure profit. And then fourthly, the acquisition of SBG in June 2021. They're the guys that do all the F1 measurements.
Right.
You convert that into NFL. You convert that into football. You have real technology. I love these guys. They're just turning cash flow positive. So, but the runway for them is just enormous.
Huge. All right. I'm looking also forward to seeing ChatGPT win the Manager of the Month award
absolutely
in the Premier League. Knock off Ange Postecoglou with his...
As you well know, Adam, winning the Manager of the Month award is the kiss of death, and Ange has won it 3 times in a row and hasn't won a game since.
That's right.
So there you go.
Very good. So Catapult is a buy.
Catapult is a buy,
All right, next up, we are looking at Commonwealth Bank of Australia, ASX, CBA, well-known stock, currently trading at $103.36. Another repeat entry, actually. We had this one once before. Andrew, CBA, buy or sell for you?
I'm sorry. I'm just, I'm going against the grain here. It's a sell. Okay. It's the world's most expensive bank, pretty much. It is a brilliantly run institution. Let's get that absolutely straight. This is all about valuation and forward looking. Okay. It's not about management's no good or anything like that. It's 17 times PE, which is way more than any other banks. That's twice the PEs of US banks. I think the environment in Australia for banking is going to be really, really tough over the next 2 or 3 years. We know the consumer's under enormous pressure, just about in every respect. Their wages are too low. Inflation is 5% plus. It's very, very embedded. We have an asset bubble in residential property, which means that the core that this bank stands on is massively overinflated in price. Their margins, I think, are going to start getting squeezed. It's going to be hard for them to actually grow mortgages because basically nobody's going to qualify for a mortgage based on the usual the usual criteria. So I just think it's going to be really, really tough. And the option is that you get a real asset deflation and that those bad debts really start to increase. So I think their profit growth is going to be extremely hard to come by. Sure, they will defend the dividend at all costs. We know that. And all those boomers called your mum and dad will, keep owning the stock for the dividend. But I think it's rabidly overpriced despite the fact it's run extremely well.
All right, great to sell. All right, next up, we're looking at Endeavour Group Ltd, ASX EDV, currently trading at $4.96. They actually supplied a lot of what you see here in the no holds bar. And if you keep buying $1,200 bottles of whiskey, Andrew, then I think they're going to be in pretty good shape. Is this a buy or a sell for you from Endeavour Group?
For the same reason that CBA is a sell, Endeavour Group's a screaming buy because when all else fails, you just go have a beer and then another one. Market cap's about $9 billion. Okay, the stock is down from $8.32. It traversed $4.50, so it's currently just in the high fours, as you say. PE of about 16.5. This company owns Australia's best retailer, Dan Murphy's. There's 266 Dans out there. There's 1,400 BWSs. They manage 350-ish hotels, and they own about 60 of them. This is a group which is really opaque. If you're an investment analyst, don't get your boss to have you cut your teeth on this because they tell you nothing. Okay?
Why?
The reason they tell you nothing, embedded within the company is a $1.7 billion turnover wine business, which is a completely integrated wine business from one of the biggest wineries in Australia, Dorian Estate in the Barossa Valley, the biggest packager of wine in Australia, Vinpac, and a whole bunch of brands, things like Kate Mintel they own, Riddoch they own, Oakridge they own, and they just don't tell you about it, and they don't give you the numbers to break that out because it's all hidden in retail in amongst the Dan Murphys and the BWS. Eventually, this company will actually start being a bit more disclosive. The negatives on it obviously have been poker machine reform, because all those hotels have got pokies in. But they're gradually really refining those hotels, as you well know, to get rid of pokies, put in more dining, put in better stuff. These guys, despite Bruce Matheson, he was the old codger, inverted commas, at the he was at the AGM.
Right.
Old codger, a very wealthy old codger, he has 15% of this, so, and he knows how to run pubs. I think it's really too cheap. It's the sort of environment that Endeavour should do well in. If you don't, if you can't afford to go to, high-end restaurants, you will go to the pub for a, $10, $20 snitty and a beer. Okay?
I think even if I can afford to go to a high-end restaurant, I'm still going to the pub for a snitty and a beer.
Absolutely. And they run it really well. The management is really, really good. They're amazing. They've dominated liquor retailing. They've killed Coles in its stone dead. Yeah, so I actually love them. And they're now, a fraction of the price that they were. It was spun off from Woolworths in 2021. Woolies still own about 8% of it. So I think it's really good value at these prices. Love it.
AerCap Holdings, New York Stock Exchange. I like that. AER, currently $67.54. The world's largest airplane leasing company. If rental cars have taught us anything, surely this is a bad idea. All I can picture is the co-pilot just egging on the pilot to push it harder because it's a lease vehicle. Andrew, is AerCap a buy or a sell for you?
It's actually a hold.
It's a hold,
and it's my other side of the holds, which is I want the share price to come down so I can buy it.
Okay. Very good.
It is the world's largest aircraft lessor. It has 1,733 planes, to give you an idea. 48% of the planes that you fly on are leased. Okay, they're not owned by the airline; they're actually leased. And these guys are kind of like number 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are so dominant; it's not funny. Yeah, they're more dominant than Endeavour are in liquor retailing. I had 13.7 billion US market cap, which is 21 billion Aussie. Look, the story here is really simple. In November 2021, so post-COVID. So don't forget, these guys went to a standstill, in COVID. There were no planes flying and none to lease. They basically bought out they were the biggest player. They bought out the second biggest player, which was called GCAS, which was General Electric Aviation Services. And they bought it for $30 billion US, but a lot of stock. And GE ended up owning 45% of their stock. Literally last week, they sold the last of their shares. So that's been holding the share price down. The story's really simple. The stock's on less than 7 times PE, but you can't get a new plane if you want one. Okay, the basic new aircraft deliveries are miles behind the timetabling. They're only delivering about half what they were in 2018. Yeah. Okay, this is Boeing who've had issues, as you well know.
Is that still the COVID sort of remnants of the COVID supply shortage?
Or absolutely, This is the one place where, most other supply chain issues have been worked through. This is one area they haven't. So if you're an airline wanting to start up, or you're an airline wanting to expand, and they all want to expand because they don't have enough capacity, you've got to get a plane. Where do you get a plane from? You get it from AerCap. Right. Yeah, so it's almost a monopoly. I was amazed the deal was allowed to go through, to be honest. But anyway, it was. So it's brilliantly run. The management is sensational. So it's listed in New York. It's actually run out of Dublin for reasons to do with TAX. Yes.
No surprises why it's run out of Dublin.
That's right. But if it comes back a bit, book value is about $80. If it comes back, I want it below about 60, and then I'll get interested again.
Okay, that's a hold.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we're looking at Vivendi on the Paris Stock Exchange, EPA VIV, currently $8.82. And I was looking at Vivendi's shareholder page on their website, and it just has pictures of Lamborghinis. So that was pretty much the conclusion of my thesis right there. I'm in. Andrew, what's your take on Vivendi?
Okay, Vivendi is the bottom of the chain of a company called Bolloré, Bollore, which I've written about extensively. Yep. It's basically €9 billion company, so 15 billion Aussie. It's a media conglomerate, and I mean conglomerate. It's got all kinds of shareholdings in other companies, the biggest of which by a mile is it owns 10% of Universal Music Group, which is the world's biggest owner of recorded music. Yep. They have a partnership, whatever that means, with some chick called Tay-Tay.
Right.
Okay, so the 10% of UMG is worth 4.4 billion euros alone.
Yep.
they've just taken over. They got to 60% of a company called Lagardère. Lagardère is the world's third largest book publisher and also the world's second largest travel retail business. Mm-hmm. It owns Replay when you go to the airport and pay $5 for a Mars bar. Oh. So the likelihood is that there'll be some asset sales in there. There's a very strong chance Vivendi will be acquired by its parent at some stage because it's so cheap. And its two core businesses that produce 100% cash flow back to the company are Havas, which is one of the world's leading ad agencies, and Canal Plus, which is the leading free-to-air TV station.
I've seen that on SBS somewhere.
Canal Plus is the leading free-to-air in France, plus owns Studio Canal, which is obviously a film producer and everything else. There's a load of options as to what Vivendi can do, selling off some of its investment assets and obviously maybe acquiring... they're looking at a thing called MultiChoice, which is Africa's largest pay TV business. Right. So there's a lot of sort of moving parts in Vivendi, but the key is the core cash flow trades at, in my opinion, less than 1.2 times enterprise value to EBIT. So real cheap.
That's a buy.
That's a screaming buy.
Screaming buy. I like it. Yeah. Screaming around our Lamborghinis. Speaking of Lamborghinis, we're going to look at Coinbase Global NASDAQ coin, COIN, currently $115.54. Andrew, crypto, it's more Lamborghinis. What are we looking at here with Coinbase?
Well, I've given you two asset bubbles so far, which is NASDAQ mega stocks, property in Australia, and this is the third, which is
not much left.
Crypto.
So we can't do property, asset, stocks, or crypto.
That's right. There's no residential to short. So
So
it's basically 27 billion US market caps of 42 billion Aussie. Obviously, I've been a bear about crypto because it's got no intrinsic value.
You should talk to my brother, the economist. He's very much on your side.
I know there's other sides of the coin. I think it's become increasingly clear that crypto does actually have some very, very significant uses. They're called drug dealing, financing terrorism, and all kinds of things.
Don't forget cybercrime.
And cybercrime. Well, I hate to mention it, obviously, because it sounds flippant in a very serious situation. But it's been very obvious that Hamas, for example, has been financed through crypto. North Korea is financed through crypto and crypto theft. And this is the key listed exchange. So the bull case for it's been that you're going to have crypto ETFs. But I think the bear case is, as you're seeing with the ongoing investigation of Binance, that basically there'll be more and more regulatory crackdowns on this stuff, particularly as people realise it has no logical use at all, other than basically, dark things. So
does Binance's troubles help it at all in the short term, or we're kind of
I don't believe so, because I think it's the bigger picture of what Binance has actually done. And so, Coinbase makes most of its money from interest, to be blunt. It doesn't make money. The transaction side of things has gone down dramatically. The fact is people have actually lost interest in Bitcoin despite the price going up. It shows you how manipulated it is. So it still makes no money, despite despite a significant revenue base and significant interest revenue and taking its cost base down. So I think basically down the track as the steam comes out of some of these asset bubbles, that's one, and so that's an obvious sell to me.
It's a sell. All right. Okay, next we're looking at Virtu Financial, NASDAQ VIRT, currently $18. Andrew, the only news article I found of interest to me was that they got sued by the SEC in September.
Yes,
which
they did.
Always a good sign, right?
Absolutely.
These people are watching them. Any publicity is good publicity, right?
Absolutely. No, Virtu and the SEC, it's kind of like Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. They just keep going at it. Look, Virtu is, have you seen the film Dumb Money, Adam?
Oh, I don't think I have, no.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure many of the watchers have seen Dumb Money, which is obviously about the GameStop situation.
Yeah, I did see that, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you've seen that, there's one of the guys on it, you see the guy who heads up Citadel. Ken Griffin is portrayed really appallingly, actually. Now, Citadel are the largest market maker in America. What that means is that they do actually buy trades from Robinhood, Interactive Brokers and others. So Virtu are number 2 behind Citadel, and they get away with no mention at all in the movie. The reason they can do it is there's 16 exchanges in the US. There's the 3 main ones, the NYSE, the NASDAQ, and the CBOE. But then just below them, doing about 13% of the US equity volume each night is Citadel, and Virtu do about 9%. And what they do is they buy orders from interactive brokers, and they put a buyer and a seller together inside the what's called national best bid and offer spread. Oh, yeah. So they benefit from, number 1, high volume.
Yep.
So they made a fortune when the GameStop thing was on. And number 2, wide spreads. They like the spread between the bid and offer to be wide. Yep. It's usually wider when markets are volatile. Okay. So they made their best ever money, obviously, in March 2020, when COVID panic was at its peak. Yep. The shares are making, on average per month, the company makes about $4.5 million US a day in trading profit, but that's only about a third of what they were making at their peak. And the shares trade at about 8 times their current earnings. So I think the PE's bombed out on bombed out earnings. Yep. They're really, really smart. The stock is 60% owned by one guy. It's a $3 billion US market cap. I think it's a fantastic antidote, if you will, to the Coinbases of the world. Yep. Okay. So, they benefit from speculative zeal. Yeah. Virtu benefit from sheer panic. Yeah. So if there's a real dislocation in markets, Virtu's the kind of
has
thing.
Has the retail trading volume gone down though?
Yes, it has.
All the free money in the market
that's one of the reasons they're scrambling a little bit. Right. Absolutely, the volumes to give you an idea, when GameStop was going on, the volumes are about 12.5 billion shares a day. They're currently just above 10. Yeah, so okay, right. That's why they're not doing as well.
All right, that's a buy for you.
That's a buy for me.
All right, it is now time for the big call, Andrew. We're looking at Ocado Group on the London Stock Exchange, OCDO, currently $571.80.
Pence, mate. Pence, mate, not dollars.
Sorry, yeah. Grocery technology company. We are a long way now from the corner stores and pints of milk, aren't we, Andrew?
We are indeed, Adam. We are indeed. Now,
so what does Ocado do?
What does Ocado do? All kinds of things you don't understand. Okay. It's a fallen angel, okay? The stock got to 28 quid a share, and as you said, it's about 5 quid 70 now. Yep. So it's a real fallen angel. It got there obviously in the pandemic. Market cap's about 4.7 billion quid or 9 billion Aussie. Okay. It is the world's leader by a mile. Right. In basically smart platforms for grocery retailing. Okay. In other words, it's the guys that use completely automated warehouses to basically pick grocery baskets for online grocery retailing for major retailers, some in the UK like Morrison's, and increasingly they're setting up fulfillment centres overseas, particularly in America for Kroger Company, in France for Casino, in Canada, and they're the guys that Coles have done a deal with but is yet to really get off the ground. Right. They should have about 46 fulfillment centres around the world up and running inside the next 18 months. The way they get paid is they take 5% of the sales volume of those centres. And you may think, my God, how can they do that when Woolworths only makes 4% margin? Well, of course, what they're doing is they're taking away a lot of the cost base of the retailer itself.
So the margins go up.
So margins for the retailer go up. It's really smart technology that's been applied to grocery retailing. It's clearly got applications everywhere else. It's these things where you see robots whizzing around on a grid effectively, and then they're picking items, and they can do it basically at less than 1/3 of the time that a human, even a very, very well-trained human, can walk along a range of stacks.
Even a human on rollerblades, Andrew?
Even a human on rollerblades, absolutely. Even a Wayne Gretzky on an icy floor. Yeah. So they do it so much better, so much cheaper. They don't make money. And one of the reasons they don't make money is they have their own retail operation, which is a joint venture with Marks and Spencer. So they own 50% of that. Next year, that will be sold because Marks and Spencer love it, and it will be an arrangement with Ocado, obviously, to to run the logistics side of it as well. That will give them money. It will get some of their debt down. So it's a non-profitable company at the moment.
Yep.
It's got quite a bit of debt, but, and here's some learning for everyone out there.
All right.
One name you have heard of, one you probably haven't.
Okay.
The most recent buyer of this stock in volume has been Lingotto Asset Management, that you've probably never heard of, but it's a subsidiary of Exor. Exor is John Elkann, the Agnelli family's holding company. They're the guys that are the major shareholders in Ferrari.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so these are smart. I've mentioned Exor on Equity Mates a number of times. They've just been buying hand over fist. Okay,
Yeah.
They love it, and they've got a real long-term view on things.
Right.
The other guy you've never heard of, probably, he's 77 years old. His name is Nick Roditi, Roditi. He is a serious under-the-radar investor. He's been in this thing since before it IPO'd.
Right.
Okay, and he's still there, ridden out the cycle up to 28 quid and back down. Hasn't sold a share. He owns 14% of the company. Just Google Nicholas Roditi, okay?
Yep.
You'll find about 3 things about him, but devour them because he's an amazing investor. Okay. So I love the fact you've got smarts on the register. And the register's about sort of 50% owned by about five institutions and smart investors.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Perfect. So that sounds like another screaming buy, Andrew.
It's real robotics. It's real AI in action, not theory. It's real. It doesn't seem like
it seems like groceries and kind of perishable goods may not be even its forte. Like I would think something that has a long shelf life can sit there in a big warehouse is better suited, right?
I think you're absolutely spot on, Adam. Absolutely right. So the applications for this down the track, I think, are unbelievable. And the key thing is they're focusing on the tech now rather than the retail. So
right. Excellent. Good. All right. Awesome. Andrew, that's it. That's the end of the show. Massive thank you to you for joining me. It's been a great show. Where can people find you if they're interested in following you, Andrew?
They can follow me. They can follow me at Abron Investor, ABRON Investor on Twitter. They can follow me at East 72 Dynasty on Twitter. That's much more focused on the Dynasty Trust, and at east72.com.au, and go to the Dynasty Trust stuff. These are huge quarterly every quarter.
Yep.
Like 27 pages on Bolloré, for example, in June, and 18 pages on Virtu in September. So we write a lot of stuff. So you can follow me there in terms of what we're doing and what we're looking at and what we own.
Excellent. Fantastic. And if you'd like to hear more from me, there's a new episode of Comedian versus Economist dropping every Wednesday wherever you get your pods. As I mentioned, this is the end or the final buy or sell for this year. If you've enjoyed it, and I hope you have, then let us know. contact@equitymates.com. It's just like when I had to pitch Comedian versus Economist. Bryce and Ren actually have a replica of the set of Shark Tank in the basement in their office in Sydney for people to pitch new podcast ideas. So any support you can give me, I can include in my pitch. Be much appreciated. That is it for us. We will hopefully be back next year, but I'd like to thank all of my guests for joining me on Buy or Sell, and thank you to you, Andrew. It's been a lot of fun.
My real pleasure, Adam. It's been great fun.
Yeah, great. Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye for now.